good morning to you live from Gallagher Estate in Midrand in Johannesburg on this, the second and final day of the DA's elective Congress. As you can see inside where the delegates are, some 2,000 of them. Celebrations, well, perhaps we don't know because voting is already closed. We'll get to know at about 2 o'clock this afternoon who will lead the country's official opposition between John Steenhuisen and Dr. Mpho Phalatse. We understand that the voter turnout was at 98.2%. So official voting has been closed. That is done. We will hear later this afternoon who will take the Democratic Alliance forward. So we also saw yesterday in the address by John Steenhuisen, who has been the leader of the Democratic Alliance, making 7 pledges to the 2,000 delegates gathered here, talking about bringing the African National Congress below 50%, ending load shedding, as well as dealing with the high crime rate, as well as corruption. So Dr. Mpho Phalatse, in her speech, looking to delegates to say she is the alternative, referring to the past mistakes of the Democratic Alliance and how they've lost voter confidence, referring to between 2016 and 2021, in which the Democratic Alliance had lost 1.4 million votes. So that is what she put to the delegates yesterday. We'll wait to see exactly who will lead the Democratic Alliance, but let's delve into issues now as the music goes on inside. And joining me now, Dr. Piet, or Professor, let me get it right, Piet Croucamp, who is a senior lecturer of politics and international relations at Northwest University, as well as my colleague Mzwandile, who is political editor here at the SABC. Prof. Croucamp, I'm sure we can say it's crunch time now. Voting is done. 98.2% voter turnout. Not everyone voted.
Not everyone voted, and you know, just in jest, 98.2%. Also, the members of the Politburo voted for Xi Jinping recently in the Chinese election. So it's a figure that works well, I think.
Yeah, it works well. All right, so look, I think let's just start here. I mean, it's crunch time by 2 o'clock this afternoon. Judging by how proceedings have been on time, we are likely to hear who the leader of the Democratic Alliance is.
Yeah.
What does it look like?
The question is, the leadership that they elect today, will that allow South Africans to say there is an alternative to the ANC? Maybe if Phalatse wins, it changes things, but I don't think. I think this generally accepted that she won't win. John Steenhuisen will win. You have John Steenhuisen, you have Helen Zille going to the 2024 elections. Let me just tell you this, if you repeat the same thing and you think you're going to get a different outcome, you make a big mistake. So we know that the DA will remain a liberal party for a very specific identity if the elections work out the way we expected it to. The real question was, what can they do to change it? They have leadership here on the floor today that they can change it. If you, for instance, combine Mpho with Jordan Lewis, you have something that you can change in South Africa. You can change the voting behavior. You can represent yourself as an alternative to the ANC. They don't use that opportunity today. I think they will regret it.
The liberal doctrine, that is what has been sold to South Africans. Are we liberal?
South Africans are not liberal. The Afrikaners are not even liberal. I said to Gwedi Mantashe that the Afrikaners are not even liberal. They are conservatives. They hide at the DA from the ANC. And if you want to market a liberal idea, and that's what they do, they keep on hammering away. And the big problem with liberals is what they do is they say, this is who we are. These are our values. You can vote for us if you like that. If you don't like it, then we're not interested in you. What you have to do as a political party, you say, these are the needs in society. These are the problems in society. These are the concerns in society. I'm willing to present your concerns. Unless they change that philosophy from either you believe like us, or we're not interested, or we will represent you, regardless of who you are, regardless of who we are, we will represent your interests. Yeah. I think they will always battle.
Mzwai, let's take a look at the speeches by the 2 top candidates yesterday. John Steenhuisen putting forward these 7 pledges to the delegates, talking about dropping the ANC to 50%, ending load shedding, touching on those issues. I guess that would appeal to some. And Dr. Mpho Phalatse talking about experience and qualifications. We expected that to come up. Also making reference to former President Jacob Zuma. Just talk me through that.
Well, very good morning to the viewers. You see, what John Steenhuisen presented was something of what is it that he will do if he wins the election. Dr. Mpopalatse basically went on to say, I have these qualifications. But you know what that meant? It was basically a swipe at John Steenhuisen, who has matric, and this is a qualified doctor. So already you have two candidates who present two different two different viewpoints in so far as how to take the DA forward. But as the Prof has said, I think one thing that is the greatest challenge for the DA is to convince the mass, the generality of the public, that it is actually an alternative to the ANC. You can bring the ANC below 50, but the question is, what do you do? In Johannesburg, the ANC is below 50. You have had the opportunity. Did you do anything different? In Nekuruleni, even in Tshwane. So these are some of the examples that are already there. Yes, talk about bringing the ANC below 50, but is there anything different that they're going to do? As for Mpopalatse, she's being accused of being aloof. So what sort of engagement do you have with the communities? Because at the end of the day, Prof, as you've correctly said, if you want to be a political party that will govern South Africa, you must not only talk to people in Johannesburg, Cape Town or Durban, you must speak to people in KwaNongoma, people in Kuruman, everywhere, because that is your voting base. Remember, one man, one vote. Even if I'm a billionaire, when I vote, my vote is one. Even if you have nothing, when you vote, your vote is one. So it's very important.
Paul yesterday said, I worked in Alexandra. She said, I've been on the ground. But I think you're perfectly right in your question. She also took a swipe at Ellen Zell when she said, there will be not this culture of fear. I will address that notion too. So she, with very well planned code words, she took a swipe. Because remember, and that's the one thing that you can criticize the DA if you wanted to. They constrain the debate, what you're allowed to say. You cannot criticize your opponent. There's no competition in this process. You have to confine to the liberal norms. Again,
is this a process then of just ticking the boxes? Why are we?
It takes competition. It takes competition out of the thing. There must be a real competition, and that.
So there's no real competition.
Well, if you take the ANC conference, you can blame it for a lot of things, but nobody knew who was going to be elected. It was real. It was boisterous. It was aggressive. It was difficult. It was hard to contain the program. Why? Because it was competitive. You put 5,000 South Africans in a room and you tell them to elect their own leadership. That is real competition. You don't get that here today.
Is this part of what some would say the DA manages to conceal quite well, in that there are serious problems within the Democratic Alliance when it comes to issues of whoever wants to compete with the, I don't know if I should call it faction, of a certain side that is presumed to emerge.
Narrative. There's one narrative here. You either conform. That's what liberals get wrong. They define the narrative. Either you conform to the narrative, or we marginalize you. It's not the real open competition. It's not the real contest. It's not even the real merit. Open up the debate so that people here can say, John, you've been in control of this party for so many years. Black South Africans don't vote for us. Why not? Answer me that question.
Is he even being held to account? I mean, if we look at just the coalitions, in these crucial metros, Tanya Campbell, who I'll be hopefully speaking to a bit later on this morning, she was ousted there. You also had the DA ousted in Tshwane. You also had serious issues in Johannesburg as well, Mzwandile?
I think that's what somehow hinders the DA's growth, because they are so fixated on the so-called our values that you even forget about even those who somehow support you. The reason why the coalitions have collapsed, some of those that have collapsed, because those parties, listen to those parties, what they say. They're basically saying, we support these ones. They are so arrogant. They don't even want to move an inch when we say, okay, maybe compromise here and there. So what you do, I think the difficulty really from the DA's point of view is the refusal to somehow accommodate others, because we believe in these liberal values and principles, so whoever else comes with something else, so no, it's our way or highway. And that is, for me, is what will continue to hinder their growth. But if they are able to be open, because you can still have your values, but somehow accommodate others. I mean, the fact of the matter is that South Africa is a diverse country. Some of our interests are different. So that I believe in A does not necessarily mean that because you believe in B, you are bad. It's just that our belief systems are not the same. What do we need to do? Let's just see what works between the two of us so that we move forward. The problem right now is that my way or the highway.
Has that been, Prof, the downfall of the Democratic Alliance in that it's refusing, seemingly, to change or to even look at what's not working and perhaps apply what could work to make it more appealing to the electorate? And the leadership that comes out of here needs to take the party to the next election.
It is simple. There's ample room for being a social democratic party in South Africa. Black South Africans will vote for a social. That means that you have a market economy, but you take social responsibility for people who have inability to access the system. Just take that responsibility for a larger society. Yesterday I spoke to the chief whip, and she reminded me that a year ago they did in Parliament actually say that they will actually increase the child allowance. Why don't they discuss it here? Why don't they market it here? Because they know amongst their traditional constituency, white South Africans, there's this stigma about these allowances, so they don't want to alienate them, so that it is not something that's really on the floor here. Land reform, child care allowances, is not, they don't discuss that because they don't want to alienate constituencies. The thing about South Africa is that you make a big mistake. In the last election, only 12% of the eligible vote voted for the ANC. 88% of South Africans voted for another party, or the majority just stayed away. In KwaZulu-Natal, the people voted IFP, then they voted ANC, and they're going gradually back to the IFP. In the Western Cape, they voted ANC, and they went to the DA. South Africans do change their minds. The EFF is another example. Do change their minds, and they are quite willing to move from one party to another. Present yourself as an alternative to the ANC, and you will get the votes.
Has the DA managed, I think, over these 2 days, I mean, 2 days I think is a lot to ask for anything to change, but has it presented itself any different to woo, because I guess them being here, speaks to them preparing, I guess like all other political parties, for the election, which is just less than a year away?
I think where South Africans will be able to really judge is when the new elected leadership gets onto the podium and pronounces what is it that we've agreed upon, what is it that we are going to do. Right now, it's just another conference. Well, to their credit, in terms of organization, they've organized maybe quite well, but beyond logistics, it's the content that matters. South Africans want to hear if there's anything beyond what is being presented. So is there anything of substance there? We will have the leader announced at 2 o'clock. That leader will get onto the podium at 2:30. That statement will be what South Africans will judge. So is the DA any different, or is going the same trajectory? Because one thing that they've always been saying, who want to bring the ANC below 50, who want to build the new majority party? I mean, Prof can tell me, how long have you been hearing that?
The problem here is the DA can't bring the ANC below 50. The tragedy of all this is, what can bring the ANC below 50 if people don't go and vote? So the DA relies heavily not on attracting new voters, but if there's less than 50% people, like in the last election, turning up to vote, they have a much better chance to bring the ANC below 50. You cannot rely on that.
Yeah, what is the likelihood of that? I mean, look, there are many challenges that the country is facing at the moment. And if you just browse through what upsets them most, would be the issue of the continuous, blackouts. And the ANC has seemingly wanted to deal with that. They know how crucial that is for the election ahead by bringing in a new Minister of Electricity, Dr. Khosenzo Ramakgopa, and they're hoping that he would be able to perform some miracle between now and then to save what is left.
The electricity doesn't play a role, like many other things, but the biggest thing is because the ANC and the state, the government is so closely aligned, the complete absence of government in any of these areas, the complete absence of the state. Try to call a policeman if somebody is robbed in an informal settlement. Try to ask for services in that area. You don't see the state, you're not aware of them, nothing. The complete absence of the state is the reason why in the last election, for the first time in South Africa's elected democratic history, less than 50% voter turnout. So people don't respond during elections if the state becomes completely absent. And now the DA relies on that, because if it dips below 50%, the ANC dips below 50%. If the ANC, normally with national elections you have around about 60% turnout, and local elections a little bit lower. If the turnout is 60% again, the ANC is 52, 53%, and you get exactly the same pattern you had in the past.
That's all you wanted to ask?
Yes. You know, with the electorate of South Africa, I think in their minds it's ingrained that the ANC is the party. So that's why if there are issues like in 2021 where they feel unhappy about a number of issues, instead of switching the vote, they just sit at home. If, for example, between now and 2024, which is exactly a year, there could be visible change. So that kind of vote, you'll see it go up. But the question is there a capacity or even the will to change things in this? You know, you left with 12 months now. We are in
That's
April.
very little time.
So I think the best bet, the election will be April or May. So that's what is left now. So for the ANC to increase that vote, they must make sure that between now and then, blackouts are a thing of the past. And they can be able to stand on the podium. They must be able to say, you know, this is the kind of things that we've done around crime. So with that, so it goes to what you've just said.
They can't do anything about crime. They can only keep the lights on. That's the irony of it all. The ANC now heavily relies on ESCOM to get people to come out and vote, because you cannot do something about service delivery now. You cannot do something about crime. There's nothing you can really improve. Otherwise, they would have done it already. So the DA relies heavily on a low voter turnout, and the ANC heavily on electricity being on at the time. How tragic is that from a voter's perspective?
Has the DA, has it become comfortable with just being that parliamentary opposition? Has it fully, or even at all, capitalized on the failures of the governing party? Have they done that?
Look, the media has done that the best. Our democracy standing Zondo relied heavily, almost exclusively, on the media for writing its report eventually. So the media is fulfilling that role much better than any opposition party. But the DA is not a bad opposition in the Western, in the national legislature. They're not a bad opposition. You can keep on reminding South Africa about what the ANC is doing wrong. But we all know that already. The trick is now to, in that legislature, become a majority, or in that legislature to represent the people who are disaffected. If you think that 88% of people out there didn't vote ANC, or they don't vote, there's a massive constituency available for you. You can now move to the next level from being a good opposition to be an effective opposition, and to be a majority opposition, or to be a majority party even. They must just be brave. The thing about this week, 2 days, was about being brave. Not about being right, not about being liberal, but about being brave and elect the type of leadership that will actually get South Africans to erode that trust deficit between black South Africans and the DA, to say, yes, it is an alternative to the ANC. I don't think they used the opportunity today.
Look, I'm basing my next question on what you've already said would possibly be the outcome of this Congress, that John Steenhuisen would take.
John Steenhuisen is going to win.
Okay.
He's going to win. And you can get Helen Zille and John Steenhuisen going into 2024, and you can't change
So there's
anything.
a lot of commentary about, because you've already said, the both of you, that if you're not with us in the Democratic Alliance, you are basically out. It'll be interesting to see then, based on your projection, what then happens to Dr. Mpho.
It will be very interesting. I think I had an opportunity to speak to her, I think 2 weeks ago, and then I posed this question to say, so if you don't win, will you walk out? Like we have seen a number of other high-profile individuals walk out of the DA. Because as we are sitting here discussing the DA and what it means, sometimes it's what people see happen that helps them inform their decisions. You had Mzwandile, for example, who was the leader, who saw by the DA, and then people, wow, so the DA is really not a white party. you had someone like Bongani Baloyi, good mayor in Midval. So that municipality has completely changed. It's now in the hands of the DA. So you had Mbali Ntuli, you had Lindwe Mazibu, very eloquent people. So these people saw by the DA, but the people who had closer inner workings in the DA, all of a sudden, they take a turn and say, we can't relate anymore. And that's what South Africans will be asking. If me, at a distance, I'm told to come to the DA and I'm not sure, and then someone who then gets the opportunity to be at the highest, like Mosi, like Herman Mashaba, then says, well, we thought DA was what it was. Actually, it's not. So that is another thing, Criselda, that will then inform what the electorate say or think about the DA.
Prof?
She's fit for purpose in Action South Africa. Her husband's already there. I think she will do well there. I think over time Herman Mashaba will disappear from the scene because I think he's much as a problem as a solution. It's a pity Bongani Baloyi didn't take over the Action South Africa because I think he's a real dynamic, intelligent, charismatic leader. He should have been the leader there. Imagine you had Bongani Baloyi and Paul Paglatse, he would have had dynamite.
So you spoke about the speeches. We'll hear then whoever wins. The Prof is already sold on who's taking this. I cannot say. We don't have thoughts.
I think he's basing it on. As we were covering the build-up, so we looked at the nominations, and I think most provinces supported John Steenhuisen. So based on that, I think that's the kind of projection we would do. Even in the ANC, we would look at how many provinces have backed who, and then based on that, we say, oh, this one is likely to take. I think the reason why perhaps we think John Steenhuisen will take it because most provinces have come out backing him. But of course, Mpopalata said, I am working the ground. It's not the leaders who vote. Is the people.
If Mpopala Paglatse wins today, Helen Zille is going to drink a tea with a lot of sugar, I tell you that.
Okay, so they're busy with policy resolutions inside. I'm hearing from my colleagues in our broadcast van. And key to that, and I asked some of the analysts that we spoke to yesterday as well. If you look at some of the policy resolutions, you've got issues on BRICS, wanting South Africa to remove itself from BRICS. There's also a very interesting one relating to an inquiry into farm murders, and this is just a year to the elections. Remember, of course, that the Democratic Alliance had lost some votes to the Freedom Front Plus and good of that more white conservative vote. Let's talk a bit about that as they discuss those policy resolutions inside.
Let me say, I think the Federal Executive under Helen Zille, they're responsible for policy in some way. Their most loyal alliance partner in any coalition government is who? Is the Freedom Front. That's the very party whose constituency they tell a vote for the Freedom Front is a vote for the ANC. A vote for a small party is a vote against the likeliness of getting a majority in the legislature. So what do? They go after the support base of their most loyal alliance partners. In Johannesburg, they lost Johannesburg for exactly that reason. What they should be doing is, and that is their real Achilles heel, they should be going for 5 million black South Africans that's looking for a political home instead of trying to get 300,000 white people back by emphasizing farm murders as a political crime as opposed to a real crime scene. It's opportunistic and it's cowardly. They should be going after the 5 million people, black South Africans, that's looking for a political home. Why do they undermine their most trusted, most loyal alliance partners by going after minorities? You must see the letter that they've written where they undermine the PA and Action South Africa in the coalition arrangements in Johannesburg.
I guess where that accusation of so-called arrogance that they were speaking about come from that.
Also, talking about the issue of the resolutions, and as what Prof is saying, where they should be looking. If you look at some of their first resolutions, number one is Ukraine. And if you then are able to read the mood of general South Africans with what's happening in Russia, so you should be able to check really if what you want. Black South Africans, obviously, I'm generalizing here, so will be more inclined towards Russia because you go back to the struggle, and then you look at the issue of them then condemning that. I mean, already you have seen some of the people saying when President Putin comes here for the first time, we'll go to the airport and welcome him. So that just tells you, and then you come out and say, we condemn this. When he comes here, he must be arrested. So you want to govern South Africa. Of course, you have to stick to your principle, but also be aware of the people you lead. Check their mood as well. So if you feel strongly about it, take them into confidence. I mean, John Steenhuisen went to Ukraine as well, and then we have this big issue around Ukraine and Russia, and the BRICS situation. Right now, whether you like it or not, there is a global realignment. Yes, you're not going to depose United States overnight. I mean, it's a superpower. But the fact of the matter is that there is something happening in terms of realignment. If, for example, the dollar is finally being dumped, or what happens? I mean, you have China growing up, you have India, you have Russia, you have all these other countries. Because even the EU itself, by the way, so they may end up benefiting.
If we look at that first resolution, John Steenhuisen, of course, also went to Ukraine. There's a lot of condemnation for... I see your look. John Steenhuisen went to Ukraine. I think
this thing is more complicated.
But also, while there has been staunch criticism of Russia, I don't see any condemnation. You have the United States, NATO sending heavy machinery to Ukraine. I've not seen any condemnation there.
Maybe you shouldn't make the mistake by thinking that there's some justification for what Russia is doing because there's no condemnation. That one. But let me just tell you one thing. I teach international relations. The Chinese have a vested interest in the dollar being maintained. They don't have one in another currency. Because remember, most of if the American economy sneezes, the Chinese has got serious problems. So don't think that alliance between Russia and Xi Jinping is a complicated one. So, but what I'm saying is, I don't think that's an issue for South Africans by and large now. It's not an electoral issue, what's happening in Ukraine. I think they tried to cash in the fact that the International Court of Justice made pronouncement on Putin, that he's coming, and they know that there's enormous pressure now on the ANC will make a very specific decision. They tried to cash in on that a little bit, but I don't think that's going to have much bearing in the election next year.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time indeed. And Prof. Croucamp joining us, Senior Lecturer of Politics and International Relations at Northwest University, as well as Mzwandile Mbeje, who is our political editor here at the SABC.